Welcome back. You're watching The Global Eye. We are discussing Kamala Harris's speech at the Democrat National Convention. We have with us Pramit Chaudhuri, Ambassador Bhattacharyya, Major General Dhruv Katoch and Padma Sundarji as well. Let me go across now to Pramit Chaudhuri. Pramit, when you look at the funding that both sides have raised, it's over $500 million for Kamala Harris and roughly $378 or $358 million for Donald Trump. How much is this likely to matter? Because according to reports, Kamala Harris's funding could go up to $600 million by the end of August.
Well, money is always important in a U.S. election, in any major election, including India, especially given that social media and advertising in many ways has now become much more important than, let's say, mainstream newspapers and so on. And the ability to assist, it's not just, but remember, it's not just about the presidential campaign. It's about the ability of you to support candidates for the Senate and for the House of Representatives. The entire House, the entire lower house also goes for elections in November, and 1/3 of the Senate also goes in. And for a successful presidency, you need to be able to have at least one of those houses on your side, preferably both. So the money is not just about winning the presidency; it's about winning the legislation as well. So I think that is important. And I think what is also important, though, to realize is that if you look at Kamala Harris's political career, it has always been well funded because she's from the Bay Area of San Francisco. And it's been the tech companies in the Silicon Valley area which have funded her, Nancy Pelosi, Gavin Newsom, a whole cluster of the San Francisco-based politicians. So they have always had good money. But it's also an indication, I think, that that Trump's own sort of erratic behavior has cost him a lot with big business. Business is particularly unnerved by some of his policies and his constant talk, especially during this election campaign, that my real enemies are inside the United States, that he seems to be more concerned about supposed enemies that he feels are after him. So yes, I think this is an indication of a number of things, but it is really more an indication, I think, of anything else, as I said, about a sense among a large portion of mainstream America or establishment America that Trump is really not the president that they want to have in a second term.
Right. Let me go across to Major General Katoch at this point. Major General Katoch, of course, it is proud for us to see an Indian origin American on the ballot for the US presidential election. But at the same time, we're also clear that she is somebody who will stand for US interests first. But at the same time, what does this show about the rise of Indian Americans in US politics, and what kind of role would they play in this election in terms of canvassing, in terms of votes and choosing who comes to power?
Well, I have met a large number of Indian Americans, and one thing comes out very clear: they are a very homogeneous group. All of them are very well-to-do, but when it comes to voting, they are split, I think, equally between the Democrats and the Republicans. So we have both these parties have Indian support bases. But in my view, I think the Democrats have a larger percentage of people, the Indian origin people, supporting the Democratic campaign. That has traditionally been so. And in my observations recently, I found that to be true. But coming back to your original point, no, I don't think the Kamala Harris presidency is going to be beneficial in that sense to India because she's of Indian origin. She will, as you have very rightly pointed out, look into American interests and not into Indian interests. In fact, my biggest concern as far as the Democrat presidency is concerned, the India-US relationship will be stable regardless of the presidencies. But what America does with our neighbors, I think that has been a matter of concern to me. She has very clearly stated that she doesn't like the fact that Trump supports dictators, with an obvious reference to North Korea. But then American policy has always supported dictators. When you look at South America, whether you look at Africa, even at Asia, there's support to the Pakistanis. Americans don't worry about democracy outside the United States. They are only concerned about democracy within the United States, and outside, if a dictator can help them achieve their foreign policy goals, well, they'd support that dictator. So my concern is the support which the Pakistanis are likely to get under a democratic dispensation, which will not be to the same extent as they will get from a Republican dispensation, which would be a bit harsher to Pakistan, and I feel they'd be a bit harsher to China too. The Democrats are going to be soft to these two parties, which are antithetical to Indian interests, regardless of the fact that their interstate relationship with India will be cordial.
Right. My final question to Ambassador Bhatia. Ambassador Bhatia, even though Donald Trump is someone who is volatile, we do understand how he functions. But at the same time, you have Kamala Harris. We've seen her in the Vice President chair, but we haven't seen too much of her foreign policy decision-making or how she acts in critical geopolitical situations. There are challenges for us in our neighborhood and geopolitically in the Middle East, in Europe. How do you think things could change regardless of who's in power in the White House in November?
In my opinion, I would not be particularly worried about whether it is Trump or Harris, because I think we have achieved in some ways a certain bipartisan support for a common agenda. What we also see is that there is a rising commonality of interests as we move into the future. We do see that there is a much greater focus on our neighborhood, not just in our immediate neighborhood, but if we look at the extended neighborhood, the rise of the Indo-Pacific is something that will continue irrespective of which side comes into power in the United States. And I think the kind of leverage that India works into the emerging Indo-Pacific will be very crucial. And I suppose the kind of support that we will get from either a Republican or a Democratic administration in DC will again be quite similar to those persuasions. There is, I think, a point that I would like to make about our immediate neighborhood. And I think the kind of interventions that we do see in our immediate neighborhood, particularly those that tend to foster or support governments that do support state sponsorship of terrorism, or even things like the change of regime, are often destabilizing for the region. And while the impact of that may not be felt as much across the ocean, their impact in the immediate neighborhood is often more. So we do hope there will be a sort of consistency and aligning of the objectives, particularly for the neighborhood. But that challenge remains irrespective of which side comes to the fore.
Okay. All right. I've completely run out of time, but I'd like to thank all our viewers. Padma Rao, my apologies. We've run out of time on the show. But Major General Katoch, Ambassador Bhattacharyya, Pramit Chaudhuri, thank you very much for joining us here on Global Eye, giving us your view on that historic democratic national convention. And let's see what happens in the days to come. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Global Eye. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18. News and updates continue on the other side.